Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about this Festool TS55 Track Saw. So this is the Festool TS55 RE-BQ 240 volt track saw. I bought it because I was looking for a saw to cut sheet material, and I wanted a saw that was going to give a really good finish, particularly on melamine face chipboard, because I was doing some kitchen fitting. I was adding some additional units in the kitchen that I've got, and I wanted a really clean cut. I've also been thinking of getting a track saw for a while, so I decided to go with this one. I wasn't prepared to pay the premium for a cordless track saw. I had looked at the DeWalt Flex Bolt. I've got a lot of DeWalt tools and I rate their tools very highly, but the DeWalt Flex Bolt was just coming in far too expensive at over £600 with the additional batteries that I would have had to have bought because I'm not on the Flex Bolt platform. And because of my affinity or loyalty to DeWalt, if you like, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, I did look at the DeWalt corded track saw. That didn't seem to have as good reviews as Festool seems to have. Festool seems to be the go-to tool in the track saw industry. I think they actually invented the track saw. And I actually managed to find this track saw with a 1.4 meter rail and the much lauded Sustainer box for £390. So it was only £40 more than the DeWalt track saw that was with the similar rail, etc. Still not cheap, I acknowledge that. There are much cheaper track saws on the market, but I decided to go to the premium end because I really wanted that cleanness of finish and the additional features that are meant to come with this saw. To give a demonstration of the cleanness of cut, I'm going to cut some of this melamine face chipboard. For the eagle-eyed of you, you may have noticed that I've got an MFT table. I'm going to do a separate video on that later. But for these purposes, I'm literally just going to have the rail sat on top of the melamine face chipboard with a bit of 6mm MDF behind it as a sacrificial base, because that should give the cleanness of cut on both sides that Festool really talk about. I'm not going to make sure this cut's square or anything like that. I'm just going to demonstrate how clean the cut is and how accurate you can get it in terms of the rail not sliding around, etc. First thing I like about the tool is you've got this detachable cable. So that means if you do have other Festool tools, which I don't, you just connect one cable to the power supply and you can just change the tools on one cable, so you don't have to keep connecting and disconnecting loads of tools. The thing that Festool is also renowned for is the dust collection, and it's really good on this saw. I've just got my standard Nilfisk vac connected to it. I've got this adapter that's a DeWalt adapter, and it just slots in here really nicely. It's got a pivot on it, which is again really good. We'll see how good the dust collection is in a second. One thing you'll see now as well is it's actually quite quiet, which is good. The only other real corded tool I've got is my DeWalt table saw, and that sounds like a jet fighter compared to this. The depth of cut is really easy to set. You just use this little dial. The one that says FS is for when it's on a guide rail, and the other one is for if it's just flat on the floor without the rail. This is 18mm melamine face chipboard, so I'm just going to cut it at 20mm because I want to go 2mm into the sacrificial piece behind it. So that's the cut piece of MFC. There's a tiny bit of chip out. This is zooming in really quite close. Probably a tiny bit there. I'm just using the standard blade that comes with the tool. You can get a triple chip blade, which I actually have got one that's specifically for this type of material, but I just wanted to show you guys the cleanness of cut that you can get straight off the bat with a material that's renowned for chipping out. This is the underside, tiny bit of chip out, but not much at all. When cutting plywood or MDF, the finish is absolutely perfect. And as you can see, that cut line is extremely straight. I didn't do any measurements, but I just wanted to show you the cut. This is the offcut, and as you can see, the finish on the offcut is really quite good as well. The saw's actually got an additional feature here, which means if you push this splinter guard down on a flat to the floor like that, it means that it really prevents the chip out on the offcut as well, so you get a precision finish on both sides. I haven't got the little screw in to hold it in place here, but you can put a screw in and it fastens it more so. So to change the blade, you lift this up, push the saw all the way down with the depth at maximum, and it clicks, and that locks the arbor in place with the arbor showing, and you can change it. That splinter guard's just got in the way. I'll take that out. The other thing I like is it's got all the accessories you need to hand. So this Allen key that you use to undo the blade is in the handle. So to undo the blade, you it's all locked in place. So literally you just, it's stiff, turn it, undo the nut, that comes out, take the blade out. That's the riving knife that automatically pops down, and you can just put your blade back in, fix your arbor back over the top, put your nut in. Tighten it back up. And then to bring it back up, you just push the handle in, and there you go. Put the splinter guard back. I've mentioned the dust extraction. That really is fantastic. Hopefully you saw when I cut that piece of MFC, hardly any dust was come up. I've got the saw connected to my Nilfisk vac using the power takeoff, so it's not a Festool vac. I haven't got the budget for one of those. They're even more money than the saw. Seems to be some sort of Festool tax goes on with this sort of thing. I also like the way the saw just glides up and down the rail. There are two little lugs on the back that you tighten to make sure it's sitting nice and square on the rail. And if you over tighten them, it won't run as smooth, but this is just perfect. And there are another of really nice things this saw will do. It will bevel up to 47 degrees if you want to undercut. The depth adjustment is so simple and really accurate, so that's fantastic. You can cut very, very close to a wall. I think up to 12 mil to a wall, so that's nice and close. The other real benefit is that you can combine it with all sorts of bits from the Festool system. So this is sat on the MFT table. I'll talk about that in another video. That's a really good bit of kit, although a bit, well, very pricey. I'll talk about my thoughts on whether that's worth it or not in another video. There were a few things about the saw though that I didn't like, and I'll talk you through them now. So the first thing I don't like about the saw is it's not actually very powerful. Although I think it's 1400 watts, I will check that. It isn't that powerful. I mean, that helps with it being quiet, but if you're cutting through, say, a 40 mil piece of oak, you do need to take 2 passes because it will struggle to go through, and the electronics in it will try and keep the speed constant, and it will cut out if you're not careful. So it isn't that powerful, but you can get around it by doing 2 passes, but then you do have to be careful around accuracy suffering. And if you use the rail like I just have, i.e. not clamped down, which to be fair you wouldn't do very often, there is a chance that it will move around. The next thing I didn't like, and this actually really surprised me about the tool given Festool's reputation, was that the blade wasn't square out of the box. So it wasn't giving me a complete 90-degree cut from the base. It was probably about 89 degrees, maybe a bit less. And that meant that the cut wasn't square. And that was really easy to tell, because when you just did a cut and flipped it over and lined it up, it was quite obvious it wasn't square. It's quite easy to square it back up. You have to undo this knob, this knob and then you tweak a couple of nuts, but I was quite surprised that a Festool tool out of the box wasn't square. The other thing that really annoyed me, and this is probably just my OCD, is this little dial for the angle. The whole idea is that this notch here is meant to be at 0, and try as I might with adjusting the adjuster thing down there and looking in the manual and looking on all sorts of other manuals online, it was really difficult to get it aligned to 0. In fact, I still think it's probably not bang on 0. No, it's not, look. And for something that's meant to be built for such precision, that really annoyed me. If anyone has any ideas on how I can get it to exactly line up, please put them in the comments and say what you like about me being stupid. But I have looked everywhere and I couldn't find it. The other gripe I've got about the saw, and it's really to do with Festool generally, is the price of the accessories. This rail bag was £50, and that was the cheapest I could find it. And really, if you're carrying the rails around, and particularly if you're moving from site to site, which I'm not a site worker, but you know, if I go to houses or I'm renovating a property, I will want to take the rails with me, and I want to do it in a secure and safe way. 50 quid's a bit much for a bag. Also, things like the anti-kickback stop or plunge stop that you use if you're doing plunge cuts in something like a worktop, I think it's about £17 just for a small bit of plastic. Bit extortionate really. I suppose once you've got the saw, they've got a bit of a captive audience with you. The other gripe I've got, and this is probably a bit of a controversial one because I know there's a lot of Festool fanboys out there, and you'll see them putting their pictures on Instagram of all their sustainers all stacked up. I don't actually like the sustainer. I mean, it's lovely colours, but it's really quite brittle. It doesn't feel that sturdy. The hinge is only plastic. Yes, the inside's all nicely decked out, and it's the saw fits really nicely inside it, etc, etc. That way. It's got this T-lock system on the top, so the idea being that you can either just lock it like that, or you can put another sustainer on the top, which I have actually got because I use this for my accessories for my MFT, and because I want to keep them all together, I bought another sustainer. Probably a bit silly, but you put it on the top and it locks in place like that, and you can lift them both up. It's quite heavy. I've just broken the T-lock. Maybe that sums up what I'm talking about. Now that was probably my stupidity because I didn't lock the back in. All the Festool fanboys will be annoyed. There we go. But yeah, it's a bit heavy. There we go. And the idea being, if you flip it all the way around, you can open it. But you're not going to want to open that with that on the top because it's just going to fall off. So, not a fan of sustainers. Especially as I'm used to these DeWalt T-stacks, you feel like you could probably drop it from quite high up. In fact, I have. The plastic's much more kind of softer in a way, feels less brittle. These clips, there's no fanciness about them, they just lock on. The new ones are actually metal as well on the hinges, so much stronger. You've got a nice little window where you can put labels in around what tools are in it. You can't do that on the Festool. So yeah, not a fan of these, very much a fan of these, but maybe that's just because I'm used to them. But these definitely feel a lot more brittle than these. So that's the end of the video. I hope you found it useful. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek at times, but I guess I'm just not cut out to be a Festool fanboy. I am glad I got the saw. It's really accurate. The dust collection is brilliant. There are some niggles that, quite frankly, I didn't expect from Festool, given the reputation it's got. Maybe I got a Friday afternoon build, I don't know. Would I get more Festool gear? I think probably the only other bits I would go for would be the domino, because I think they look like a great bit of kit. The MFT table is very useful. I will talk about that in another video. Again, it's very expensive. I think Festool generally, you can get carried away if you decide you want everything green and grey. It's a pretty colour, but it's an expensive colour in my opinion. And I think I will be using this quite a lot particularly for cutting sheet goods. Like I've said, there are some really useful clamps and things that I will talk about in another video as well. But for now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you've got any tips or hints on how I can adjust this a lot easier, and maybe the gripes I've had have been due to a lack of experience, then please comment and let me know, and hopefully see you again soon.